Hello there everyone, your fluffy armchair Admiral Latter is back with some more hot ship action. In today's episode of Lots of Guns series about Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, we are going to talk about Mogami class cruisers. They were successors of A-class cruisers that consisted classes like Furutaka, Aoba, Miyoko, and Takao. However, there was an attempt to make them lighter and arm them with smaller caliber guns to turn them into light cruisers. Did that plan succeed? Let's find out. But before we begin, I will have an announcement for all of you. First of all, when this video was recorded, I received information about upcoming Alpha 6 update. So next video will most likely be recorded in a new game version. Another important announcement is that I am in the process of upgrading my gaming and recording PC, which may cause some videos to be delayed or cancelled in the next week or two. And finally, we now have a Discord server where you can join and have a chat with me or rest of the community around this channel. Server is still being set up more or less, but you can join it now using link in the description of this video. So, let's now build our Mogami class heavy cruiser, but first we need to set up the battle. So we are going to set the battle at year 1939. Why is that? That's because certain elements of hull and armament might not be available before that date. That's why we have to set it a little bit later than the ship was actually commissioned. We will set the engagement distance at 25,000 meters, and battle will be set up in 4v4 configuration between Empire of Japan and United States. So without any further ado, let's begin. We are going to build this ship in 3 configurations, so let's begin from the first one. Let's name it and set displacement at 13,500 tons, which is pretty much the maximum displacement that this ship reached. In 1935, which is the first configuration we are going to use, the speed of that ship was 35 knots. Or at least that's how much this ship could speed up to. We will set range to medium, bulkheads to standard. There is no need to change anything. Right. When it comes to engine, it's going to be geared turbines with oil fuel and auxiliary engine 2 with shaft 2 installed as well. When it comes to protection, we will set armor to crab 3 to not make it too overpowered, barbets to 2, which is sufficient to survive hit from similar size guns that we are going to use. And anti-torp will be set at 2 or 3 depending on whichever you prefer. I will set it on 3. Double hull bottom, which is normal for this series of ship, and reinforced bulkheads. Anti-float at least 2, we can go for 3 because ships were definitely able to pump out the water. We will go for 3 for this build to give us a little bit more chances to win this battle. And Citadel all or nothing configuration, which is Citadel 5. When it comes to shells, we will use standard shells with increased ammunition load. We will take more torpedoes as well and set propellant to Corded 2, which is the one that was used by Japanese Navy. When it comes to turret traverse, it was electric hydraulic turrets. So that's what we are going to use with enhanced reload. It was supported by hydraulic presses. When it comes to torpedoes, ships were equipped with such. There were 6 torpedo tubes per broadside in 2 triple mounts, and they were oxygen powered 24-inch torpedoes. When it comes to equipment in 1935, we are going to use Coincidence Rangefinder 4 with advanced radio telegraph without any radar. When it comes to armor values, they were as follows: 4.9-inch belt, going down to 3.9 inch belt extended, with deck 2.4 inch going down to 1.4. When it comes to conning tower, it was unarmored, and turret top and secondaries were 1 inch thick. And that is pretty much it when it comes to our basic setup. We can set boilers to forced because definitely we won't be able to achieve engine efficiency needed to reach that 35 knots. Right, so now let's put our superstructure and other elements on top of that hull. And as I said before, we are going to use 1935 configuration first, which is, let's start from main tower. It's going on a 5th snapping point, just like that, and then the rest is pretty straightforward. Modern secondary tower just behind first tower, and that is pretty much the core of our ship. We are going to use super funnel 2 to get that engine efficiency up. It's still not where we want it to be, but well, it is the best we can get. And let's start putting turrets. We can use only 6-inch guns for the first version of the ship, which was built in light cruiser configuration. And it was pretty much sold to other nations, or Japanese tried to convince other nations that this is in fact a light cruiser. Right, we've put 4 out of 5 towers in place, and now it's time to start putting torpedoes before we put the 5th tower. So we put torpedo launchers at the first slot behind superstructure to leave some space to upgrade this tower to 8-inch later in latter configuration, and another torpedo tubes pretty much along with raised deck element on that hull. When we get that sorted, we can now put that remaining 5th triple barrel gun turret, and we need to put it as close to the launchers as possible. In fact, we can use the snapping point, so I didn't have to mingle with it. And one last thing that we need to put is 5-inch secondary gun turrets. Again, you need to snap it using shift to move it further away from the second turret. Then it will perfectly and nicely snap. You can put another set of secondaries slightly further to the back to both increase offset or improve offset and improve angles for these 2 guns. And that is pretty much our Mogami in 1935 configuration. And by that time it was a light cruiser. Then in 1937 ship received some modifications which turned it into heavy cruiser. So what Japanese did, they replaced gun turrets, and instead of using 5 triple mounted 6-inch guns, they decided to go with 5 double mounted 8-inch guns, which is cruiser size caliber. So let's put those in place. It's slightly more difficult to squeeze in the front towers, as you can see. The rear tower is pretty straightforward. As soon as you can put it without any shift or control, you just snap the 4th tower, and the 5th one you need to use a shift button and put it as close to torpedo launchers as possible. And that is pretty much our configuration. Last thing that we need to do, as in 1937 ship also received a reinforced torpedo protection just to reinforce the hull itself that cracked during sea trials. Japanese decided to put torpedo bulkheads that not only improved the hull's strength but also improved stability of the ship. And that is pretty much it when it comes to things that we can do with that ship. Last thing, I think, oh yeah, there's one last thing that I forgot. Speed, because of added bulkheads and drag, speed dropped by half a knot to 34.5. And that is Mogami in 1937 configuration. And the last configuration that I wanted to show you, or actually last two configurations, are nothing else than configurations that were Mogami's modification during the war. So during the war, Mogami and her sister ships went through a series of modifications that added a lot of anti-air guns because they were actually needed. But also they introduced Generation 1 radar in 1943 and Generation 2 radar in 1944. And that is pretty much the only modification we can do to put this ship into 1943 configuration and 1944. For the purpose of today's battle, we are going to use 1937 configuration, so no radar for us, and pretty much the rest stays as it is. So, without any further ado, let's begin the battle. So, as the battle loads, I would like to remind you that if you like the video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button to get notification every time I upload a new video. Also, don't forget to share your comments down below. So, let's now talk about history of those ships. They were laid down between October 1931 and April 1934, following fleet replenishment program, with first ship of the class Mogami to enter service in 1935, followed shortly by Mikuma. Both ships were classified as light cruisers at that time due to their armament of 155mm or 6.1 inch, and because officially on paper they were under 10,000 tons displacement, even though in reality ships displaced nearly 11,200 tons. Later the same year, both ships were undergoing sea trials, which showed several issues with the design and construction of those vessels. Poor quality of welds resulted in cracks when guns were fired. Superstructure turned out to be too heavy, which caused instability problems, especially during harsh weather. Finally, new and untested equipment turned out to cause a series of technical problems. Because of the results of sea trials and the fact that Japan decided not to sign Second London Naval Treaty in 1936, both ships, along with their yet-to-be-completed sisters, Suzuya and Kumano, went through major refit, and by the end of 1937, all four sisters were in commission, this time as heavy cruisers. However, some of them remained in dry dock until 1939 to complete those works. During refit, all main battery guns were replaced with double mount gun turrets, reducing the amount of guns to 10, but increasing the caliber to 203mm or 8 inch. Another change was to reinforce the hull strength and stability by adding torpedo bulges that also greatly improved torpedo protection. But extra drag and weight associated with that change caused a top speed to drop to 34.5 knots. In mid-1941, all four sisters took part in Japanese invasion of French Indochina, and late the same year they covered landing operations during Japanese invasion of British Malaya. On 10th February 1942, Mogami and Takao-class cruiser Chokai were attacked by US Sargo-class submarine USS Sea Raven. But all torpedoes fired against Japanese cruisers have missed. 18 days later, Mogami and Mikuma, along with several destroyers, took part in Battle of Sunda Strait. They engaged in battle against USS Houston and HMS Perth. Both Allied ships sank in this engagement, but they managed to sink Japanese transport Ryujo Maru with 16th Imperial Japanese Army and its commander, Lieutenant General Hitoshi Imamura. In April, Mogami and Mikuma joined her remaining sisters in Indian Ocean raids. Within less than 2 months, Cruiser Division 7 and Cruiser Division 4 managed to sink over 20 Allied merchant ships. Shortly before Battle of Midway, all ships were ordered back to port to resupply and regroup. On 5th of June 1942, an order arrived for Cruiser Division 7 to shell American positions at Midway. As cruisers were far away, they made a high-speed dash towards their target. Later in the evening the same day, the order was cancelled, but at the same time, lookouts at Kumano reported sighting of US Tambor-class submarine. She signaled to the rest of the squadron to make a 45 degrees turn to starboard side. The first 2 ships in the battle line managed to execute the correct maneuver. However, the third ship in line, Mikuma, performed a 90-degree turn, causing the last ship in the line, Mogami, to ram her. As a result, both ships were forced to retire, and with an escort of Arashio and Asashio, they began their voyage to Wake Island for repairs. Since very early morning the next day, both retreating cruisers were under attack from several waves of American planes. First 2 attacks did no damage, but third attack from USS Enterprise and USS Hornet scored multiple hits across all 4 ships. Mikuma was hit by 5 bombs that set her ablaze. Unfortunately, fire caused torpedo magazine's explosion that caused her to roll to port and sink. 2 months later, she was officially removed from Navy lists. Mogami was hit by 6 bombs, but unlike Mikuma, she managed to jettison her torpedoes on time, preventing their explosion and most likely being the reason why she survived. However, her 5th turret was destroyed by a bomb hit and 81 crew members were killed as a result of the bomb hits. Both escorting destroyers were hit by 1 bomb. Mogami and 2 remaining destroyers made their way back to port. During repairs, a decision to rebuild her was made, and in August the same year she began another major refit. Her 4th turret along with destroyed 5th were removed, and her aft magazines were converted into fuel and munitions storage, along with her aft deck that was extended and fitted with a flat deck and rails to accommodate the planned stowage of 11 reconnaissance float planes. It was completed in April 1943 and recommissioned to the First Fleet. As for remaining sisters, they returned to Kure on 23rd June and later were assigned to 3rd Fleet. In late August, Suzuya and Kumano joined Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo's carrier strike force and began patrolling waters northeast of Guadalcanal. As a result, a battle of the Eastern Solomons occurred. While Suzuya was away from the task force, American aircraft from USS Saratoga sank Japanese carrier Ryushu. Kumano managed to escape without seeing any combat. A month later, Task Force was engaged in another battle with the United States Navy near Santa Cruz Islands. Suzuya once more was too far away from the battle, while Kumano was providing only support and didn't see any action during this encounter. Since November 1942 until mid-1943, Suzuya and Kumano were patrolling the area near Solomon Islands and supported Japanese operations in the region. They were also undergoing some minor refits where the anti-air defenses were enhanced and they received radar equipment both for air and surface search. In July 1943, Kumano was escorting Tokyo Express convoy. While performing her duty, she got under attack from United States torpedo bomber aircraft and her aft hull got badly damaged. She spent almost entire rest of the year under repair at Kure. She then returned to Truk, where she was based for next few months. Suzuya returned to Kure in mid-January 1943 for urgent repairs. While docked, she also received additional AA guns and air search radar. 6 months later, she and Mogami and few other vessels were escorting a convoy near Solomon Islands and got under attack from United States aircraft, but managed to get away without taking any damage. Speaking of Mogami, she returned from her repairs in April 1943. A month later, she once more collided with other vessel. This time, it was oil tanker at Tokyo Bay. She just got slightly damaged and got back into action very quickly though. All three ships continued patrols near Solomon Islands until mid-1944. In June 1944, they took part in Battle of Philippine Sea, when Imperial Japanese Navy lost their ability to perform large-scale carrier action. All three cruisers survived the battle and returned to Okinawa. Later, they were transferred to Kure and received another upgrades to their anti-air defenses. Also, their radars were replaced with newer models. In October 1944, Kumano took part in Battle of Samar, during which she was hit by 4 torpedoes fired by USS Johnston. She attempted to retreat to Manila Bay for repairs, but came under attack from US aircraft. During that attack, she got hit by 3 bombs, but still managed to survive and made her way back to harbor. Suzuya and Mogami also took part in that battle. During the encounter, Suzuya engaged with 3 American escort carriers, but got under attack from torpedo bombers. During first attack, she suffered damage to her propellers. During second one of her torpedo tubes was hit, which caused an explosion which destroyed her propulsion. She was abandoned later and sank. While some of the crew members were rescued by friendly destroyers, US warships later rescued some more of her crew. She was removed from the Navy list on 20th December 1944. Mogami was ordered to provide reconnaissance using her large aircraft reserves. Scouts reported sightings of multiple US battleships and aircraft carriers along with large fleet of transport ships in the region. Mogami's group was soon attacked by aircraft from USS Enterprise and Franklin. She suffered minor damage. On 25th October 1944, the Japanese force were attacked by PT boats and destroyers. Battleship Fuso and Yamashiro were damaged by torpedoes and later sunk. Destroyer Yamagumo was sunk and Mishisho was disabled. Luckily, Mogami got away from that engagement without taking any damage. Not for long though, as soon after Mogami got under fire from USS Portland and her conning tower was hit. Both captain and executive officer were killed and Chief Gunnery Officer had to assume command. While attempting to retreat to safety, Mogami collided with battleship Nachi. She survived that collision, but was hauled on starboard side, and some of their torpedoes exploded, damaging her engines. Later she came under attack from US cruisers once more and took several 8 and 6-inch shell hits. Finally, last of her engines broke down and she was adrift. Shortly after, she got under attack by US aircraft and took further bomb hits. Soon after, her crew decided to abandon the ship, and later, destroyer Akebono scuttled her using one Type 93 long-lance torpedo. Mogami was also removed from Navy list on 20th December 1944. Finally, Kumano returned to service in November and was immediately assigned to escort the convoy to Taiwan. On 6 November, said convoy went under attack from US submarines near Cape Bolinao. Kumano received 2 torpedo hits that destroyed her newly repaired bow and caused heavy flooding in her engine rooms. Flood also made ship to list by 11 degrees to starboard side, if I remember correctly. She was towed by one of cargo ships and ended up in Santa Cruz. While undergoing repairs, she got attacked by aircraft launched by USS Ticonderoga. During the attack, she got hit by 5 torpedoes and 4 bombs and sunk in shallow waters. She was removed from Navy list on 20th January 1945. And that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed. Please consider to bombard that subscribe button, use the bell afterward, and don't forget to sing some comments down below. Have a great day and see you all later. Later. Out.